We're gearing up for Western Art Week, when Great Falls becomes the Western art capital of the world. 16 different shows with art ranging from paintings and sculptures to furniture and jewelry. On this episode of We're No Damn Experts, we're talking with one of the artists at the Out West show, Ron Ukrainetz.
Best damn podcast, the best damn town. You wanna get up, get ready to get down. With its big wide sky and the wild river Thames, if you wanna go, we can take you there to Great Falls, Montana.
Welcome to the greatest damn town in Montana, Great Falls. I'm Rebecca Ingham.
I'm Shannon Newth,
and we're No Damn Experts. I just want to acknowledge that this super
real
sexy voice, in my 90s friends will know the smelly cat sound.
Phoebe.
Oh, yeah, I've got it going
You got
on.
it covered.
Thanks to my wonderful nieces and nephew over the Christmas season, they gifted me this.
That's nice.
So now I'm gifting it to you all.
They gift you a sexy voice. What a nice gift. Yeah.
So I'm excited today. We're continuing on our artist series.
Yes.
Tell me who's in the studio.
Yes, it's someone I count as a very good friend who's befriended my husband and I over the years, and I'm very excited to have him here, Ron Ukrainetz, who is a well-renowned, very, very talented artist.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This is fun. I haven't done one of these before, so I'm still curious about the social cue business, but I'm sure you can point at me or wave and I'll get it.
I think you're getting it so far.
Okay,
you
good.
know when to talk.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
We have probably more photos of Ron in our photo library for tourism than he expects, first and foremost.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and they're amazing photos.
Yes.
And we've used them a lot in our paid media, so you've seen Ron often. And then in addition to that, we asked him to star in our docuseries of Art in America that was on Amazon Prime. Episode 4 is all about Great Falls, and you'd get to see Ron and his wife Echo, who you have a house of artists.
Yes.
Well,
Power couple in the art world.
Well, I don't know about the power couple, but we have a lot of fun. We really do. But I want to digress just a second here.
Go for it.
You said you've been taking photos of me and you get paid for that?
She's making money off your likeness.
I'm either a public figure or an unpaid professional.
Yeah,
Ooh.
probably both things.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that
He's
down.
like, I'm going to make this good here.
There
Make some money
is
out of
one
this.
photo we have of you painting at Giant Springs Park, and I have no idea where it came from.
Yeah.
I'm sure we coordinated it somehow, but
It probably just popped in because I paint all around the city at any given time. It's just on a whim. If the weather's nice and the light looks good, I'll dive down to Giant Springs or the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. I've even painted on the grounds of the Russell Museum quite a few times. So, yeah, it could have been one of those impromptu things.
So visitors, guess if you're lucky,
Ooh,
you're wandering
you could see
around
him out in
here, you
public.
could see Ron painting live and in person.
So as an artist, a house full of artists, how long have you just been an artist? Have you ever worked a side job to keep the lights on while you did your artwork, or have you just gotten to be a full-time artist all of your life?
Well, I was in the Air Force and in the Air National Guard, and I really wanted to be an artist or be involved in art at some point. And even in high school, middle school, I was drawing all the things that middle school kids draw.
Put that up for sale.
And then decided that at some time during that period, I just decided that that's what I wanted to do. But I wasn't sure how I could pay the bills. And, of course, my dad bought and sold a lot of artwork and was a dealer and a broker. And so I got to see an awful lot of different styles run through the house. And everything from Paxsons and Seltzers, and I never did see any Russells. I don't think he had any ever, but there was an awful lot of really talented stuff go through the house. And so I think that kind of influenced when I went off to my 1 year of college. Well,
that 1 year program.
Yes.
Yeah, the 1968 wasn't, and being an artist or an art major wasn't critical to national defense. So we had to take a little side trip for a while, but I never finished or never gave up on the artwork at all. I was drawing airplanes when I was down in basic training and tech school, and drawing my squad mates, and so that just continued. And and then when I came back, I got a full-time job with the Air National Guard, and ended up. Most of the guys up there knew that I was an artist, and so when I wasn't being an aircraft electrician, I was painting nose art on some of the airplanes. And
With
that
or
really,
without permission?
well, it depends on who the pilot was.
Fair, okay.
There was a couple of instances, and I can share them now.
It's been long
Statute
enough.
of
Statute of
limitations
limitations,
passed.
yeah, that's
That's
passed. Every time a visiting commander would fly in from a different air base, he might fly home with a very personalized message on the side of his aircraft, either figure or mostly figures. Some of them clad, but at any rate, base commander was very. He would apologize for me, and then he would come down and say, you really got that one right, but don't do it again until the next time."
Right.
And so I continued that, and that was really a lot of fun because
Yeah.
you get to use the caricature side of what I saw and people, and it was kind of embarrassing on a couple of them, but you do them anyway because they're fun.
Do any of the current C-130s have your artwork on the side of it up there?
No.
Okay.
Do you want us to sneak you in at the gates?
We
and
know
you
people.
You can start painting one night.
I don't know. I'm a little too old to run away from statute of limitations anymore. So I think we'll just leave it where it's at. History is always great.
Yeah, it's always good to have it.
And if you don't know history, and you tend to repeat it, and I don't
There you
want to. I don't want to be on the lam, so to speak. But no. Anyway, it was. During that time, I was injured to the point where I couldn't continue working up there.
Oh.
And so in that little nanosecond where there was an accident that occurred, that's when I became a professional artist and painted for food. And that was my logo on my door at my house, as wheeling around in a wheelchair for a while. We'll paint for food. And thankfully, through the kindness and graces of a couple of local businessmen here who would come by and they would buy a painting and so I could survive for the next month and that it really worked out because I had kind of a collector base started, and then they would show their friends, and then the next thing you know, I've got other people coming to the house and saying, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do that?" And it worked out, and eventually I ended up moving up into the Swan Valley for a period of time.
Oh.
And that I think that's where I think that's where I really grew, because there was nobody up there. There was one other young man who was a really talented artist, and he and I would get together and we'd talk. He was actually a full-time logger, but God, he was really gifted.
Yeah.
And so he and I'd get together and we'd go dabble. We'd go paint down by the Swan or something, and that's. It was there that I discovered how little I knew.
Oh.
Really, and so I was fortunate enough to get into some shows but Lindbergh Lake, Montana, and people say, "Well, where's that?" And I said, "Well, just south of Condon with an N."
Good clarification. Yeah.
Yeah, just to make sure they could find it on a map, and see that I really truly was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And loving every minute of it. I really did, and it gave me a chance for not only personal growth, but growth as an artist, because I had time to make plenty of mistakes, not show them to anybody, but learn from them, and then eventually get to the point where, show people your mistakes and show them a growth, and to let them know that you're just as human as everybody else is. I'm entitled to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And I enjoy it. Because if you don't make a mistake, then you've already done the perfect piece, and so what's the sense of continuing?
Continuing if
you
you've
might as
done
well
the
quit.
perfect.
I've done. It's my
my perfect piece. Yeah.
the masterpiece is done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where it kind of started back in the 80s. mid '80s, and it's been the biggest joy of my life. I mean, I could have chased sparks around airplanes until I had 25 or 30 years in, and it would have been satisfactory. But this is the creme de la creme to be able to, provide a pretty decent living. I don't do as many shows as I used to anymore, and that's a good thing. We're pretty selective now. Of course, we do the big shows here in town, and with the C.M. Russell Art Auction. And then the Out West, of course, was pretty heavily involved in that. And I kind of cut everything else out after that and we do one show down in Texas, but I'm not going to tell you much about that one. But because
Texas.
We're talking about Great Falls.
Yeah.
See? But no, I come home to Great Falls after that, or Echo and I do, and hit the ground running. I mean, you get so much energy from the people. It's just it's amazing. It's like a huge shot of adrenaline, and you're just on a roll.
Yeah.
And
is it a unique feature for our community? We always brag about it, like during Western Art Week, which is 50 plus years running now.
Right.
That connection with the artist. You actually, when you go to the art shows, you get to visit with the artist. And I think that's the real unique feature of versus going to like a gallery or somewhere else, is you actually get to talk to the person that's created the work, what their inspiration was, where their mistakes are. They can point out, well, I wish I would have shadowed this differently or used this different color.
That's what the definition of an artist is. You're not ashamed to show people something that you're not happy with, because it shows you're human. You can make a mistake. The mistake is there. When you look at it, maybe you look at it through a mirror, or you take a photo and it's smaller and you think, oh boy, that doesn't work. But it's good, but it just didn't work, maybe to your standards. And I really enjoy talking to the people that come through, whether they buy a piece or not. It makes no difference. It's all part of the responsibility we have to not only represent what we see around here, but it's also used as an educational tool. And then some people realize that, and others just enjoy talking. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
The bottom line is you'd like to sell a painting or two, but it doesn't. It's not a bad thing to just sit and visit, and then let people know that number one, you're not unreachable. Number two, you're not infallible. You're going to make a mistake, and just to let people know that you're human. That's a big thing.
That was a few years ago. I had met you and Echo,
Yes.
or at least you prior to this, but I distinctly remember, I don't know, 3-4 years ago now, at the end of the big auction, Jason and I were wandering around, and when you're in the Heritage, which is where the Out West show will be again this coming March, you can go in and out of the rooms there.
Hotel rooms.
Yes, and
Converted to
right. I should
galleries.
explain that more.
Yeah.
The hotel rooms, there's the big open space where there's things set up, and then there's rooms where everything's taken out of, and there's just art in there. I remember Jason and I, it was kind of towards the end of the night. Jason and I were wandering down the hall, and we just got to talking, and we were with you and Echo, a few hours, I want to say that, and that's really where our joint friendship, I really remember that blossoming from there. But I remember you talk about, just the rawness of the experience, because those shows and the auctions that happen, I remember Echo had just had a piece in the auction, and she was a little disappointed with the result of the auction, but just getting to be in that moment with you guys at the end of this big show, that I so much effort, mental, physical, emotional effort, and just get to kind of get an inside glimpse of like, wow, the whole roller coaster ride of emotion of having a piece put up in the auction, that whole thing.
It's we have a kind of a philosophy about that, because when you put a piece of artwork in an auction of that caliber, C.M. Russell Art Auction is huge. 50. Let's see, this is 54 years now that auction has been running continuously. It's one of the biggest in the country, one of the most highly regarded. When you hang up or you submit a painting to that and it gets accepted, when they hang it up, it's almost like you're standing naked in front of a crowd, because everything that you have done, not only in the creation of that, but in life in general goes into that piece. You know, so you dropped a dish on the floor that day in your haste to get down to the studio and get to work. That's part of the painting. Because it's a memory. And I can, Echo will tell you too, that she can remember what's on the background, playing a music that's playing, or a television program that's on while you're doing that piece. So you look at that piece, you say, oh yeah, I can remember. I was watching an episode of whatever. So that's in that piece too. So you really are standing up there naked. Because your heart, your soul, all your abilities are up there. But not only that, but all the memories that you made in the creation of that piece. And in her case, months, 2 or 3 months of work. And she might not look at it that way, but that I'm a little bit more philosophical.
Sure.
But that's how I see it.
Is that hard? To me, if I put that much time and emotional effort into something, it would be hard for me to be like, okay, go out into the world, bye-bye. Like, I know that's your livelihood, but is that ever emotionally hard to pour so much of yourself and have all of those memories into a piece and then watch it leave? Or is that that's the whole reason you created it?
You don't even get to vet the person who's bidding on it. Like,
kidding.
is it
What
going to a good home?
Right.
Well,
where are you going to put it?
There's that. And that was, when I first started, that's one of the things that I learned right away is, and my father told me something when I first started, and I believe this to this day, and he said, number one, you never fall in love with your own work. But when it's time for that piece to go out the door, you just want to treat it like a puppy and make sure that it goes to the right person and goes to a good home. And he said, besides, then you get one piece off the wall, then you have to make another one to fill in that spot.
Right.
And that's how Echo feels. She puts all the time and effort into it, and I do too. I mean, we both do that. We want to make sure that it's done to the best of our ability at that time, and then we want to see it go to a good home, and then we want to fill that empty hole with another piece that's equally as good or better. And it's just the love of doing the work, and the cherry on the cake is if you sell it.
Right.
Yeah.
That really is, because then you can eat the cake and have the cherry too, that you buy with the proceeds from the painting. So, that's kind of a humorous way of looking at it. But I never forgot what my dad said. You never fall in love with your own work.
Yeah. Well, you have to kind of have a little bit of that detachment, because there are things in my home where I'm like, no, I'm not ready to get rid of that yet.
Yeah.
And my husband will look at me. He's like, why are we? We just had this incident happen with a dog bed. There's a dog bed in our bedroom, and I'm not ready to get rid of the dog bed yet. And he's like, it's been 4 years since a dog has slept in that bed. Maybe we need to. I'm like, nope, not ready yet.
Not ready. Yeah. You have to reach that point.
It has happened on occasion where you feel so comfortable with something that maybe you won't take it to the out west this year. Maybe you'll sandbag that for a while. And that has happened. I mean, and I have to remind myself, and I have to remind my wife that, we're doing okay, but eventually you're going to have to cut the apron strings and let that one fly.
Do you ever leave a piece at home and then somebody will show up at the show and you're like, I have this great piece at home that you probably would love, but I don't know if I'm ready yet to tell you about that.
That's a great point, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because both of us take photos of our work in process.
Oh.
And so if someone comes in and says to me, or to Echo, or mostly to me, do you have any elk, or do you have any moose, or do you have any whatever? I can say, I didn't bring it because it's still in process. It might,
might be done.
It might be done except for the signature, but it might be at the house still, or at the studio.
Well, and your process doesn't always just have to include the art itself. It's the process of beginning to let it go as well.
Well, that's true. Yeah, and it may not be signed, so it's still not finished until you put your signature on the bottom of it. So, that. There are a few of those that we do keep back from time to time. And some of them, of course, we just, in our individual galleries, like at the Out West, in the gallery rooms, we don't, we'll fill them up. And if we don't have any space left, then, that piece just doesn't go, and it could be a random piece or a piece that's in process, and sometimes a gallery will call and say, gee, I saw this in process piece, I'd like that, and so then you purposely set it back, and if someone comes in and says, gee, do you have any water oozles or something, I say, yeah, I do, but it's already spoken for. A gallery has already expressed interest, and so I prefer that you buy it from them.
Right.
And that way you support the gallery, you support yourself, and hopefully the buyer's happy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
do you have a piece or a few pieces in mind that you did fall in love with that you still think about?
Yeah.
Wonder how it's doing?
Yes, I do.
Call to check in on them.
I do have a couple, and there was one in particular that I did when I was living up in the Swan. I have to kind of preface the story to lay the groundwork here. I rehabilitated injured birds of prey. I don't have a degree in art. I never did get that. But I have an associate's degree in avian biology. And,
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And so what I did, I knew that I didn't understand an awful lot about birds, so I went ahead and got this course. Took this course from Cornell, and I was working on a particular bird. It was a northern goshawk that came in and had a broken wing, and so I got to handle my subject matter, and I got a little bit more attached than I should have. There are certain methods that you use so that they don't imprint on you. And even though he never did imprint me, I imprinted on him. And it was a male, really colorful male, and probably about 3.5 or 4 years old. Beautiful bird. And so we got him all patched up. And before he left, I went down and we had a piece of one-way glass down there, and I would go down and watch his movements and mannerisms. And I did, I don't know how many sketches, probably 30 sketches, different bird parts and different things in action. And I actually did the piece. And I thought, I kind of like this. There's a connection now between me and the subject matter, which is kind of, in my field of wildlife is kind of dangerous because my whole house would be filled with my own stuff. But in this case, I went ahead and I did this piece, and I let it sit for a while, hanging on the wall, and I got a frame for it, and I framed it all up, and I let it sit for several months. I didn't take it to any shows or anything. I just wanted to remember the process, remember the experience, and then a friend of mine came by. He was I only had like one neighbor within 5 miles where I lived, and he came up, and he looked at that, and he said, was this one of the birds you worked on? I said, yeah, and I told him the story. And all of a sudden, he became part of the painting because now he's identifying with what we went through to get this bird back in the air.
Yeah.
And so he ended up talking me out of the piece, and I sent it home with him. And to this day, and this was probably in 1986 or 87, and to this day, he still uses a very small, maybe 3/4 of an inch by maybe 1.5 inches image of that on the back of all of his cards that he sends out.
Oh.
And I asked him one time, a couple of years ago, I said, Pete, do you still use that? And he said, oh, God, yeah, I love that painting. He said, it's the first thing I see when I walk into my office every day.
Oh.
And so it touched him.
Yeah.
And that's the definition of art, is that it touches somebody to a point where they want to have it and they want to keep it. And I was willing at that time to share it with him. And it's kind of a heartwarming story, but by the same token, he still uses that image, and it's been since the 80s that he's had it.
Yeah.
So, and I know it's in a good home, and we became really good friends, and we communicate. He lives in Norco, California, but he owns a bunch of land up there, and so we still talk to each other. I talked to him just shortly before Christmas. It was great. I mean, it's awesome.
And that's neat to see it still is part of his life and means so much to him still.
Yeah, absolutely. And his wife unfortunately developed Alzheimer's, but she looks at that piece and she looks at it and she smiles. So
there's something.
There's something
memory.
there.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen with every piece, but it happened with this piece,
Yeah.
and so it means a lot. It really does. It's a heartfelt emotion, when somebody can take that home like that and have it touch them in such a way.
Did you paint that bird again in other iterations?
I did one, and I did one a little bit later on, and actually as a fundraiser for the Northern Rockies Raptor Center, where I volunteered my time.
Neat.
And they put it on shirts and mugs, and then they auctioned the piece off, and generated some money so we could, continue to do our work.
Do you still rehabilitate birds?
No, that's the only thing I'm capable of rehabilitating. But at any rate, no, I worked and got a lot of my prescription stuff from a veterinarian here in Great Falls, and eventually, because my space here was limited, sadly, I had to stop that. I still get a phone call once in a while from Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, but most of the people I work with are retired now. So I don't get as many as I used to. But there's a couple of rehabbers here in town now that I donated all of my supplies to, and then I returned some things to the veterinarian. And so the birds are still getting back up in the air. And that's the most important thing. I just regret that I can't do more. But you can't, there comes a time where you have to realize you can't do it all. And I just didn't have the space. I got an injured bird in one time, and it was a hawk, red tail, and I didn't have any place to exercise it. It was a minor break on the wing, but it was to the point where the bird really couldn't fly easily, and so I went out and netted him and brought him back to the house and put the wing back together, and about 6 weeks later, it was time for him to start exercising, and I didn't have a facility like I did up there, the Northern Rockies Center. We had a 150-foot flyway, and so you could exercise the birds out there, which is really fun because you just basically chase them around the enclosure and make them fly to get away from you, and then fly.
I think I'd be good at that. I just didn't know that was a calling I could have pursued.
And it was it was enjoyable, but you really had to watch out because sometimes they get a little cranky.
Fight back.
Yeah, think your head is nesting material. But anyway, I had this hawk in, and so I was going down. I talked to the game wardens down at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, and I said, okay, I'm going to be coming out today, and I got the straps. They're called Jessies. They fit around the ankles, and you put a tether on that. And so I was down at just above Giant Springs, flying this hawk on a tether in a big circle, and it was attracting an awful lot of attention.
Quite the spectacle there.
It did.
What is this crazy man doing?
And so I'm spinning around like a top, and the bird's flying, and he really wanted to get away. And when it got to the point where he was pulling pretty hard, I knew it was time to, take the Jessies off and turn him loose. And so I took him back out to an area close to where I had captured him, and opened up the box, and he didn't fly out. And I thought, well, this is weird. And so
so you ran at him.
I kind of got to the back of the box, and it was, breathing on him and talking to him, hoping that he would run away from my voice. And he stepped out the door of the box and kind of stood there and looked around and went back in the box.
Oh, no.
And so I basically tipped the box a little bit so that he could come out, and he kind of looked out there and he looked around, and he was gone like a shot at that point. He realized that
he was free.
He didn't have the straps anymore, and it was really fun to do that. But if you can imagine the guy hanging onto this bird that's flying in a circle around you.
Did you get the cops called on, the sheriff's deputies called on you ever when you were doing that?
No,
okay.
I never did. And I had to carry all my permits and licenses with me at all times. And but it was a national thing. I found one over in Richmond, Washington. I could go catch the bird, but there's a lot of federal regulations involved, and so you just got to carry that with you.
How do you select your subject matter? Did the red tail hawk make it into a?
Oh yeah, he made several.
Yeah,
yeah, he was a good subject. I could put him on a perch in my garage, and all of a sudden, magically, he would appear in a forest in a painting, as opposed to hanging tools and stuff like that. Yeah, he was a good subject, and he was a beautiful. He was a little bit older. He was probably 5 because he was. Red tails pretty much look like red tails at the end of their first year, and their colors are really brilliant when they're young like that. So he was a good subject.
Yeah.
He had great color and a good. I guess you'd say he was well mannered for a wild animal. So he made it into several. But as far as picking subjects for a wildlife artist, you can be inspired driving down the road and you see a background somewhere and to stop and do a quick field study, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hour field study. And then I'll go home and I'll look at the field study and put it up against the wall. Of course, you've seen those at the house. And I might be going through a whole different part of the country and see something happening and think, oh man, I can plug that right into that field study that I did, and it all fits. And so it could be anything. It could be a deer running. It could be a fox in the field. Sometimes it just fits, and when it's right. It's the right combination. I do take photos, but I don't have a super good camera or a big bazooka lens or anything. I prefer to work with binoculars on a tripod and a stool and sketch out of the binoculars or a spotting scope. I really, that's ongoing education, kind of like a doctor. A doctor has his practice and that's my practice.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm still practicing after 50 or 40 years, years. So
we have a few Ron's paintings in our home, and one of them. You'll have to help me with the terminology, but one of them is out, I believe, by Augusta or Gibson Reservoir out in that area that we have. And I love it because this was one of the ones that is not framed, that we had it framed. But there are like little pieces of bug or gnats or something
absolutely.
That because this was done while he was sitting out there in the wilderness. And so there's like a few little like texture pieces in there that are little gnats.
And I don't charge extra for those.
Wow.
But I just think it's so cool because it's like, Ron was like in it when he was painting, that he was right there. And this is, part of the environment that's now added texture to the sky in this painting.
That's the fun part. And every year I do a couple of paint outs. I belong to a couple of groups, and we go out professionally and paint around. And a couple of years ago, we went out to, we were painting at the north end of Flathead Lake, which is not Great Falls, but still, it's Montana. It's a pretty nice area.
Beautiful, yes.
And you can hang out there.
I did.
During the day.
I was hanging out there, and with a bunch of other like-minded goofballs with paintbrushes. And the sun came up, and a hatch came off the lake. And so I was painting sailboats with this pristine sky, and this hatch came off in a little breeze, and I ended up with about 100 of them in the sky.
Oh, wow.
And I told everybody that was my attempt at putting birds into this landscape. It was a real fine brush and trying to make up a story, and everybody was, obviously laughing because everybody else's painting looked the same way. We all had hundreds of these little gnats or mayflies and stuff stuck in our paintings.
And I think that's because I fell in love with that one. I love the water scenes and things.
Yes.
And I have one from that area, and that also has the little
gnats. That's when you're there. I prefer that they go onto the painting and don't bite me, but that doesn't always happen.
Shannon, do you have any artwork that doesn't have
bugs in it? Oh yeah, that too. Yes. We do, yes. But I just like that's so cool and it's not like you can tell it's a bug or something, but it's just a little texture.
They get into the paint, and wasps, they like the colors. And so if you have your palette open and you've got some colorful
fighting
palette
wasp
there,
stuff.
Yeah, the wasps are the nasty ones.
Yeah.
So if they land on my colors, I purposely put paint on them and make them stick to the painting.
Yeah.
Tell them it's a prehistoric animal.
Yeah.
There you
go. Landscape.
Pterodactyl.
I guess we should say not like all of your paintings have bugs in them, and it's not this over. I just thought it was a cool because it was like
feature.
he was like in the element with this.
Yeah. And that happens a lot down in Giant Springs too.
Yeah.
Especially if you're painting out on the island or anywhere along there in the summer, and you'll get a hatch coming off the springs or off the river.
Yeah.
And you're going to get invaded. I mean, the people are nothing compared to the bugs that want to fly and become a part of it. So, That happens a lot.
So, I'm going to dig into your personal life.
Oh, no.
You are married to an artist who does completely different work than you
Yes.
do.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about? Was she an artist when you met her? Did you guys meet, get married, and then she's like, well, if you can do art, I can do art?
No, she was actually an art teacher at one of the
Oh.
private schools here in town for a long time. She really wanted to do that, and she majored in history and Spanish, but she was a closet artist for a long time, and she would do these cute little boutiques. Shannon has one with the little snowman with the yellow snow, I
Little
believe.
dog peeing on it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
it's
cute.
hilarious.
Yeah,
it's
it-
hanging in our home right now
Yeah,
by the
it's-
door for the winter. Yes.
It's pretty funny, yeah. She's got a great sense of humor, and she tries to inject that, in some of her pieces. But when she was teaching, and she had moved over to Great Falls High and was a Spanish teacher over there, and she was doing pretty well, but she was doing these small boutiques at the house, and not like any traditional boutique. Her method was always a little bit different. It's her own style, which is great because she developed it. I mean, this is something that nobody else does.
The echo method.
Yeah, the echo method. That's it. Yeah, and we went to a show, and it was a show of predominantly lady artists. That was down at Paris Gibson Square, and she looked around there and she said, "You know what? That's going to be my goal. I'm gonna work, and I want to get into an all-woman show." And that was the impetus right there. And so she went home and she worked her tail off to produce work that was good enough to get into a show of that caliber. There were some really well-known artists in there. Well, the funny thing happened on the way. She did this great big 3-piece set, a triptych of 3 Native American portraits, and submitted it to the Russell auction. They never take diptychs or triptychs. It's always just one piece. And the director at the museum at that time fell in love with that piece and encouraged the jurors to take a serious look at it. And they took all 3 pieces, and so she got into the C.M. Russell auction
wow.
the first time she applied.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
my.
And it took me
Holy cow.
8 or 10 attempts.
I was like, that's
you know.
got to be a small crowd that can say that.
Yeah, it's a very small crowd, and she took it in stride. She said not that she thought she was deserving of it, but she didn't get a big head. She said, "Oh boy, now I've just upped my own game because now I got in. Now
New
I
goals.
have to continue to produce at that level, and that level has since grown beyond what we expected. But we crunched numbers. She loved teaching. She loved the students. She really did. But it got to a point where the artwork, she'd come home from school, we'd eat dinner, and she'd disappear into her studio, and she'd be working till, 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And then on the weekends. And then pretty soon that's what her life was. And so we crunched numbers for a year, and she said, well, if I could just sell 1 painting a month with my retirement, we'll make it. And so she retired from teaching after, I don't know how many years, 20-some years. And she retired early from teaching and got to pursue her dream. And we've been really, really fortunate because she didn't sell just 1 painting a month. Galleries recognized the significance of it, of her own style and how she was doing things. And some shows did too. And the next thing you know, even though, I've been around the block and I know a lot of people, I didn't have any say when she submitted to get into the show over at the Heritage Inn. Because you have to submit. You have to be juried to get a room. And you better behave or you'll lose it. So, so I told her, just make sure you behave. And all on her own. I didn't talk to anybody or anything, and I just said, you submit and see what happens. And she got accepted. And we shared a room for a few years, and then she started working a little bit bigger, and I had to work smaller. And so we did that for 1 year, and then she applied and got her own room, and now we are married, but we're independent.
Yes.
And that's
So
worked
you're
out
going to
really
find
well.
Echo in a room, and you're going to find Ron in a room,
Right.
and they're still married.
Yes.
Yeah.
Typically close to each other, right?
Yeah, we
You
try. Yeah, we try to keep that out because
Yeah.
she has to come by and keep her thumb on me just to make sure that I don't say
sure.
something stupid. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
So
okay.
how much time do you both put in to prepare for your shows? Because you likely don't just have things hanging around the house.
No, not usually, and we're very grateful for that. But we've got the galleries, you know, that we have to feed, and literally and physically. But we usually start preparing in late July, the 1st of August for the March events.
The next one.
Oh.
Yeah.
And we have the big show here in town, the Russell Auction, and then the Out West Art Show. And then the weekend after that, we have to fly down to San Antonio. It's the only 2 shows we do anymore.
They're back to back.
Back to back. And then you'd think, oh, man, then you're done. No, not really, because then the galleries say, well,
Yep.
you know, summer's coming, we need some more work. So, but our primary time for producing work is between August and the 1st of March. And we do take some time off. You know, you have to. Stress management.
Yeah.
Take a break.
Sanity salvation and all of that. And then once in a while, you know, I'll teach a class or something and or a workshop, which is always fun. Echo doesn't teach because, you know, her
She
stuff
did it
takes so
already.
long.
Yeah,
She's done.
Yeah, she's
Been
done
there,
it.
done that. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been there, done that, and not doing it again.
Do you take commission? Do you
Yes.
take commission pieces as
Yeah,
well?
and I look at the schedule, you know, look at the calendar. It depends on when. And we both, well, Echo doesn't like to. I don't mind it. You know, I've been at this a little bit longer, and I know how to frame it out for timing. And, you know, look at the calendar and see what's coming up, how much time do I have, and who's in front of them. Because I still have 3 commissions right now.
Oh, wow.
And thankfully, one of them isn't due until the end of next year. And it's a huge triptych piece for a gentleman, 3 huge paintings, and they have to fit together, and he's got a specific spot. So I've got that, and I have to travel over to the Swan and do a couple paintings over there for some people. So, you know, commissions right now are about 8 months out to a year for me, and Echo doesn't do them. So, you know, and I schedule those out. I already know what the subject matter is going to be. I've got a couple preliminaries, and there's a lot of background work because not only do I do the commissions and the painting, I also sweep the floor, work on vehicles,
Janitor
and, you know.
there, yeah.
So, you know, those are also stress management things that you have to give your brain a break. Work both sides, mechanical and artistic.
So you are one of the very few artists I've met that kind of have this interesting balance of the art and the business side. Really, and I've called Ron a number of times my art sensei. I'm like, I've got some ideas. You tell me what you think, because we'll talk. Because I'm the nerd. You know, what's the market? Who's buying? What does it look like?
Right.
Do you ever catch yourself going, well, these kind of things sell better, so I'm going to make these kind of pieces? Or do you really still just go with the passion of what you're feeling to create your artwork?
Surprisingly, it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
You know, if I'm doing a show in Texas, I'm not going to do just roadrunners, because most of the collectors and buyers in a different market area are going to be more curious about where you're from with a little bit of what they're from.
Okay.
Something that has a broad appeal. Like, I love doing horses. I'll paint horses with dramatic light on them early in the morning when the sun first comes up, and get that dramatic light on them. They're universal.
Yeah.
They can fit in both marketplaces. The one thing that I have learned about doing shows around the country is, if you show or if you can render a piece from a location close to where the show is at, that will grab the attention, and then they can explore the diversity of subject matter in your display space, and they'll be attracted, and they want to learn more about that because they've already seen 92 Roadrunners.
Yeah.
But this mountain, my God, this is beautiful. Where's this at? So all of a sudden you become a travel agent, and explain to them the benefits of
thanks,
coming
Ron. Yeah,
Great Falls, Montana.
Great Falls.
Yes.
Have you ever seen the Russell Museum? Have you
And
ever
this
seen?
and that came from.
Yeah.
And so it's a combination of both, I think, and one opens the door for the other, and it seems to work that way for me. And Native American subject matter is really big for a lot of artists right now because they are, in essence, becoming historians. That's another thing that I encourage, and when I teach workshops, is to paint what you know. So if you know Native American culture, paint that.
Right.
If you know wildlife or you've hunted or fished, paint that, and because you're familiar with it. And so that all ties in with the long answer to your question. That all ties in together, because if you have knowledge, then not only can you express it in your painting, but then you have to study yourself so that you can answer those questions.
Yeah.
Nothing more embarrassing. Say, well, I don't know. It was just a good-looking guy, and I put a headdress on. And that doesn't wash.
Yeah.
You have to be able to tell that story.
Yeah.
And you're not bogarting another culture. You're educating and sharing the knowledge that you got from that culture to the public who may not know anything.
And there's the story and
Yeah, the
significance
story.
more behind that painting then.
And it's like the teepees up on the hill up here.
Yeah.
How gorgeous are those?
Yeah.
But how many people drive by and say, "Oh wow, look, colored teepees."
Right.
Okay, so what do they know about teepees?
Right.
They know they're colorful and they're sitting on a hill by the school administration building.
Yeah.
Do they know the significance?
Yeah. And why there's so many of them and
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
What
So
tribes they represent and
yeah.
yeah,
So-
I think that's always the fun and being here in our office, we'll get guests who walk in and they're curious. They ask those kind of questions, which is really nice because they're trying to learn more, understand more about what's here, what's what makes Great Falls tick, which is really fun.
Right.
And I think that's why I enjoy Western Art Week so much is because you
Right.
are visiting with people. My husband historically has been an elk guy. Like
Right.
every elk painting or any type of art that includes something to do with elk has ended up in his purview, and a lot of it ends up in our house. And he goes, this last year at the Out West show, he says, we can't buy any more elk. We just can't.
Yeah.
We
Reached
have too much
capacity.
elk all over our house. We can't do it anymore. And I said, oh, okay. Well, we're walking past the Montana Watercolor Society booth
Right.
inside the Out West Art Show. And he happens upon Indian maiden in a field of lupus? Lupin.
Yeah.
And he just sat there and stared at her. He's like, I am in love with this woman. And I'm like,
Well, he got touched.
Yeah.
He
and
got
I
touched.
just,
Yeah.
I watched him just become enamored with this woman, and I couldn't believe. And he goes, I can't even figure out why I love this so much because it is first no
it's not an elk.
Yeah. No
not
elk in it.
even not even a mountain scene. It was a prairie, and I thought, well, my goodness, this is interesting.
It's been
Yeah.
moved. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we had or fortunately, maybe we had engaged in some of the auctions and some of the other rooms already. He's like, we can't keep spending all of
Yeah.
our money, and I thought, I don't know why we can't. Like it's hard. So that was the one piece he walked away from. But I often wonder if he would still be moved by it today if he saw it.
I'll bet he would. Those impressions last. And it's not uncommon for people, and I've seen this in numerous shows. I hear the stories from numerous artists. They'll say, geez, I had a guy walk through my booth last year, and he called me 8 months later and said, do you still have this piece? And so it's not a matter of just doing the artwork. It's touching somebody, just like it touched your husband. And he really connected with that piece for some reason. And it doesn't matter. It's a personal thing with him. And that's part of the function of what we as artists do is we try and connect.
Yeah.
And maybe conjure up a memory.
Yeah, this
or a feeling or an emotion of some
he got
type.
to visit with the artist, got the story of where the inspiration happened, what was actually going on when this watercolor was created. And I just looked at him and I said, I think because she looked just so strong. I said, I think you're probably just drawn to the strong personality of this woman in this painting. And he goes, it could be. I do like strong women.
I was going to say, well, he's married to you. Yeah.
And that goes right back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, it really does. The honesty, the artist had the explanation, what inspired the artist to do the piece. And then you find somebody in that audience of viewers that goes through and is touched by that.
Yeah.
That's the cream on the cake. I mean,
it's just so awesome when that happens.
Yeah. I had that at Western Art Week with an artist there. And I will mention this too, because Western Art Week, we think, I have to be into elk, cowboys,
or
mountains. I have a piece that Jason bought and surprised for me. I saw it at Western Art Week. He found this artist later and surprised me for my birthday. But I had this moment too with this piece, and it was a painting of an elephant on slate material that was then framed. And there was something, I was fortunate to study abroad in South Africa during college and get to see elephants I just think they're incredible animals. And there was something about the eyes and the look in this particular elephant that just struck me, and on this particular material and how it was done. And so obviously it was a huge surprise, but I had that moment with that elephant where I was just like, there's something striking about just the eyes and the look of this elephant. But I also bring that up to say at Western Art Week, there's a variety of pieces, and you never quite know what's gonna strike you either.
And the diversity, the diversity of the show itself.
Oh yeah.
Western is location. It's not a specific genre. I mean, Western could be a prairie dog right next to a piece of knapweed, and you have two pests. But it might strike somebody.
Sure.
It could be something as simple as that. But the diversity of subject matter from the West, Western art just isn't cowboys and Native Americans and elk.
Right.
There's a lot more to it, and I think that's one of the things that the Out West has to offer. Is the diversity. The Montana Watercolor Society is there as well, and even with the Young Masters, you look at what they're producing. And the Young Masters art program that we started back in 2009, I think. Some of those kids that went through those classes and went through the scholarship program and are now teaching art, and a couple of them are now artists, were all inspired by other artists at that show. Some of them, I have two in particular that I still keep in touch with that are art teachers who teach art, and they both live in the West, and they say the same thing. It's a location. It's an attitude. It's not just cowboys and horses and all the rest of it. And how rewarding can that be? I mean, to be able to touch somebody that way, and that's what art does.
There's also an interesting, I believe it was at the Out West show as well that I've seen this. It's like an Andy Warhol type of twist on Western art, where it's like the comic kind of movie reel kind
Cody's
of feel,
work.
but with and so you get kind of the marriage of the different styles there.
Yeah, that's exciting when you see that, because artists have our brains operate a little bit differently sometimes, and there's an artist that doesn't live in the West but has the greatest sense of humor. He's Native American, and I think of some of the stuff that he comes up with, like he did some ledger art with some Native Americans chasing after Custer, holding Custer, you dropped your cell phone. And where did that come from? So there is this little different plane that some of us delve into once in a while, but that's the diversity that you can see at shows like that, and of course the Out West has a history of finding those artists and offering them the opportunity to share with our audience here.
So let's dig in just a little bit to the Out West show, which is going to be part of Western Art Week. Western Art Week happens March 15th through the 19th. And throughout Great Falls, 16 various shows. Right. We've done an entire episode on Western Art Week with the the creator, Norma
Miss
Ashby
Norma
Smith.
Ashby, yes.
So you can go back into our archives and listen to that. But this year, March 15th through the 19th, the Out West show is going to happen the 16th through the 18th. You've got
Yes.
those 3 days. And there's quick finishes. There's
The quick draw.
quick draw. There's auctioning of those pieces. There's gallery rooms, we'll call them, space to go and tour all these artists and visit with them and buy their stuff and get to meet new artists and fall in love with paintings you would have never known or artwork in general that you would have not known. And I use paintings a lot because I think that's immediately what comes to my mind, but it's not just painting. It's sculptors and
wood carving.
it's jewelry, it's clothing sometimes, and there's originals, there's prints, there's etches. There's just the variety is so impressive.
It is, and you know, I've been doing the show here. I did it 2 years back in the 80s, and then didn't come back until 95.
Oh.
And started, you know, was lucky enough to get a room back then. But since then, and I got pretty heavily involved in all of that. And like we talked earlier about our Young Masters program, we're going to be giving out this year, because the Out West Art Foundation is a nonprofit. We are blessed to be able to award college scholarships.
Oh, my.
wow.
And for graphics and graphic design and art majors, there's a whole list, and those are all named for Phil and Karen Carell, who was one of the founders of the Out West Art Show, and his daughter set up an endowment, and so we can give out as much as $25,000 a year in college scholarships.
That's significant.
And then we have, tragically, Zach Babbitt passed away. He was one of our favorite artists, a young artist with more energy than 10 teenagers. Was so talented and so gifted. And tragically, he passed away in a plane wreck up in Alaska. And his family contacted us to manage a scholarship for art educators only. And so we have the Zach Babbitt Family Memorial Scholarship that we give out every year also.
Wow.
To help art students, as someone who wants to go into art education specifically. So, you know, there's opportunities there for, you know, a lot of assistance for the youth who would like to pursue this. And it's open to high school students naturally. And so, we, you know, that's one of the things. We're going to be giving out those scholarships, plus our partner, Embark Federal Credit Union, has been with us since the beginning, and they hold it's a school-wide, area schools, high schools, open to all of them, and they can submit paintings to be juried by Embark Credit Union. We manage it, but they jury the artwork. They provide first, second, and third monetary awards, and the monetary awards have grown pretty sizable for the credit union. And so those award winners will also be presented during the Out West Art Show. And that's on Saturday night, I believe. And we've got some time there to showcase who's coming up next. I don't know if you guys know this, and this was a surprise to me when I started working on the show a few years ago. Great Falls has the highest percentage of professional artists of any city in the West.
Wow. I did not know that. Another claim to fame for us.
There you go.
Ron, we market Great Falls as Montana's base camp for art and adventure because of our impressive art scene.
Right.
And I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and that was that came out of statistics about 4 years ago, and through Helena, and
wow.
I think it was when they were doing the census, and that came out. I wasn't even aware of that. I knew it was high, but I had no idea that the percentage was that high. And I'm gonna tout my high school. It's still there even after all these years. CMR in Great Falls High in the 60s, the late 60s, there, I'm dating myself, produced more professional art, architects, teachers than any school in the United States.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
And that was just in those years. But if you take a look, we had Dan Clasby, who was a world-class sculptor. He lives in Australia now. He's had 5 exhibits at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Wow.
Monty Dolak, everybody knows Monty Dolak and his wonderful posters. I sat behind him in 3rd grade. I've known him since right after dirt was invented. But you look at that, and then we have Steve Seltzer, the grandson of O.C. Seltzer, came out of this batch. And that's only 3 right off the top of my head. I have a whole list.
And
you, Ron Ukrainetz.
Yeah, you.
Well, yeah, but that's I don't want to talk about that. But no, really, when you take a look at that and the teachers that came out of that, Great
That's
Falls
so impressive.
It's a very rich culture, and of course a lot of it is influenced by Russell, but a lot of it is influenced by the teachers and the opportunities that those teachers had at that time. And so what we do as artists is we just push that along as best we can.
Well, and I think we've had an episode on the Urban Art Project where we have an art gallery built into a parking garage. I don't know many places that do that.
No.
We have 27 works of art along the trail.
Right.
We foster that art through the Paris Gibson Square Museum of Art and the classes that are offered there. We have so many different types of art that are just encompassed in this area that is encouraged and fostered, which I think is really dang cool.
Well, that and don't forget the writers that we have, which is an art form in itself, and the dancers that we have with the dance studios around,
That's
and even
true.
the figure skating. I mean,
The
That is-
culinaries.
and so the culinary arts and so it's diverse, but it's all an art form in one way or another. Whether you're baking cookies or fancy meals for someone, whether you're catering or a musician, and look at the musicians we have in town.
Oh, yeah.
Just that's all an art form. Music is poetry and song, and you take a look around town, and we've got a good friend of mine is an exceptional musician, great sense of humor, who is also an extremely talented artist.
Oh.
And so there's 2 in 1. You get 2 in 1 there. That's Chuck Fulcher.
I was
and
figured that's who you were talking about.
yeah.
We've had him on here.
He's been on the podcast.
Yeah,
Did you know he used to design swimming pools?
Yes,
in
I
Los
do.
Angeles? Yeah.
Yes, I know
I assumed that, but there's my little
that was
piece
my
of
that was
knowledge.
a surprise when he was on the podcast.
And his art form takes many shapes right now because he's got the cars now, and
Yes.
and
He's driven a couple. He's driven some up here before when
Yeah.
we've been here. Hey, come out, look at this.
yeah. Well, if it was summer, I'd have one of mine out here
Okay.
too. So Chuck and I share wrench bending stories. So, but no, you just take a look at that, and it's diverse, and it's not well known.
Yeah.
We have that diversity here, and it's all encompassed in Great Falls, Montana, of all places.
Well,
right?
and there is a room at the Out West Art Show where the young masters, the young art gets to be on display. And I think that's one of the funnest ones to go through is because you can see so much being developed and started and dang near some of them are so talented.
We have we go down and the Out West. There's several of us on the Out West Foundation that go down, and we do a preliminary jurying for the top 20, and then the Embark goes through and picks out their favorites out of that top 20, and then the People's Choice is actually the people go down and vote on their favorites. And that's where the cash awards come from. But if you really want to have some fun and go through the show, and if one piece appeals to you, you need to talk to that young budding artist and say, how much do you want for that? And watch what happens to their face.
Yeah.
Somebody wants to buy their work.
Yeah. And there was a couple pieces that, for some reason, they were really unique. And I got a chance to jury those pieces, and of course they made the top 20, and then one of them won an award, and I was going to buy that piece no matter what. And there was a little bit of a bidding war going on between the mother of the gal
Ooh.
and Echo and I.
Yeah.
And I said, you can have her do another piece for you and never tell me about it. But I'm taking this one home. And this little girl, her eyes just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we paid her fair market value for that piece, and I think it blew her away.
Yeah.
And that right there sparked another artist.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the intent. The intent was I wanted the piece.
Yeah.
But
I
just
can't
to see her
imagine.
eyes light up.
Yeah.
you
Not
know.
only is someone wanting to buy it, but Ron Ukrainetz is wanting to buy your piece
Well,
of work.
Right.
My goodness.
Well, that aside, I still have the piece. It means a lot to me because it was a young girl's 14-year-old girl. And I got into the bidding war with her mother. So I have a great story behind that piece.
Yeah.
I think that's the best part about getting art during Western Art Week is the stories
the
that you
experience of it.
have with it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And
Yep.
the bugs in the oil.
Yes, I was like, that's a story from remember walking in your room and talking about that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was great.
I do want to ask, well, I have one quick question. How many artists will be at the Out West show?
I don't have that number.
Okay.
I
Still
don't know
in
for
progress
sure.
here?
Yeah,
I'm going
Yeah.
to say 165.
Okay.
It's likely a lie. Who knows?
yeah.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
there will
there's
be a
an
lot
awful
of
So
options.
There's
Yeah.
great diversity there, and we're just grateful and thankful that the artists put their faith in the Out West to continue that legacy. The Heritage Inn has hosted the event, that art show over there, for 49 years.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they are a partner in this. The Volk family has believed in us, and that's something that just shows the strength,
Yeah.
their belief for 49 years that this is the place to be.
Yeah.
And they do everything they can to accommodate the artists, and moving the furniture out of the bedrooms and making
Tall task there.
and making them available as artist galleries, and that's how we treat them, as artist galleries. This is
And
your
they
gallery
truly
space.
are galleries, because when I tell friends and family and people about Western Art Week, and I'm like, oh, they convert hotel
hotel
rooms
room.
into a gallery, you can see some people get some really weird, confused looks on their face.
You're like, their
Yeah.
bed's not just in the middle of the room.
Like, what is
Yeah.
this going to look like? I'm like, oh, I can see you're perplexed.
Yeah.
All of the furniture is removed from
Right.
Just
the
a room
motel
that has a
room.
bathroom. Yeah.
And now all of a sudden it is a gallery, and the doors are open and you just walk through, and
And the displays are professionally done.
Yeah.
And the booth
the
space.
lighting looks good. You're not
Yeah.
trying to figure out what
Yeah.
it's
And there's, I know that there's artists that prefer a booth space because of the freedom of the movement around there, and so we've made those spaces
Yep.
available. Well, I didn't, but
Someone did.
Someone
yeah,
did,
but
yeah.
the out west
Real
did
brilliant
after
person.
after I left, but. Not that I was against it, but I just didn't have the opportunity back then. But
Yeah.
we have those spaces available now too. So it's all encompassing. You kind of take up the whole building,
Yeah.
with that space there, and and that's really cool. They have display panels there and lighting. It's all professionally done, and it looks like it's not just a fly-by-night market.
No.
I mean, this is a well
Well
run,
done.
well-oiled machine that comes together for this time in March.
and it is professional. It is not some weird experience.
No, it's very high-end feel to it.
And it's the first major event of the year in the country for this type of work.
Okay.
So this is how we think about it. Okay, everybody has got, hopefully by March has got their taxes done, and they're not waiting until the last minute.
Yeah.
And they might have a refund, and this is the first opportunity they get to go out and have fun. And the first major art event in the country of this caliber. So this is where they're going to come right off the bat. So the Great Falls is the place to be in March. It's the only place to be.
Only
Absolutely.
place.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if you got enough courage to fly in from anywhere in the country to Montana in March, it will be well worth your time to be here.
Absolutely.
And most of the time, the weather is just wonderful. It's
Yeah.
not cold. It's not winter. It's
No,
It's a little brown sometimes,
but it's usually pretty decent.
Yeah.
I can only remember two extremes. We had one year, and I don't remember which year it was. We had one year where we had an extreme heat event, and it was like 70 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
And everybody and their uncle was out on the river in the boats, and fishing and water skiing on the Missouri River before
in March.
Yeah, in March. Well, and then there was the first or second year that I got. It was 96, I think, or maybe 97. We got a huge blizzard on Wednesday. Well, almost everybody had come into town on Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
And they were locked in. They couldn't get any airplanes out of here. So the only place they had to go
was
the show.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty awesome too.
Yeah.
And that was fun. That was a real captive audience. I loved that. It was great.
So folks, by now you're like, I need to meet Ron and Echo. You've listened to Chuck. You need to meet Chuck. And you're like, this is the perfect time. Western Art Week is where it happens. Get all your details at westernartweek.com and book your rooms now. That's kind of the big thing.
Yes.
Whenever you're listening to this, I have no idea when it airs. You act like I know stuff, people, and that's not true. So check out Western Art Week. You'll get information about the shows, but that'll link you also to the show sites as well. So you can get more details of what artists are there, what kind of fun things are happening. We list all the events. It is really an experience like no other. And to get access to, I'm going to say it, it's probably a lie. All of our local artists in Great Falls are somewhere
during that week,
in Great Falls at a show that you can visit and talk with. So
I think you're pretty close on that.
Yeah, I can't imagine they wouldn't be there.
Right.
Yeah.
I just have one final question here for Ron. When I'll be sharing this video on our social channels, YouTube, things like that, because I got to go. Did I say YouTube's? YouTube channel. I got to go inside Ron's studio here a while back.
Oh.
Been holding on to this video to save it. To give people a little taste ahead of time. You are you've done so many watercolors, but when I was there and the video I have you working on this incredible piece and
the clayboard piece.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're the expert. It's almost like I compared it like a scratch board type of feel, but that's because I don't know anything. So tell us about this piece because it is not your typical watercolor images. Will that be at Will that be at
Yes.
your show?
Yeah. Yes. I work on I love working in oil first off. But I got my start with these engravings, and they're done on clayboard. I call them engravings because that's what they are.
Clayboard, thank you. I was trying to remember the name. Yes.
Well, I won't get into the scratchboard debate, but because you've heard that line.
Yes.
But no, I start and I draw all my pieces out because these things are very labor intensive. The board is expensive. The clayboard is about $35 to $50 a sheet, depending on with the texture that you want on it.
Okay.
And so you don't want to make a mistake. So I line everything out first in pencil. I draw everything out and you've seen the files. I have these big flat files where all my sketches live. And when I get the composition set up the way I want it, then I start by airbrushing all of the details, the textures, and markings, whatever, onto that, just in a dark waterproof ink.
Okay.
And so I'll have a black blob, a bird blob, or elk blob, or whatever
And I think
on this white clayboard.
Headdress was the one that I saw you working on.
Yeah, and the headdresses take me about 3 months. They really do, and I don't want to do any dishonor to the story behind the headdresses because they were built to honor bravery and courage and compassion out of their work. So those are a little bit more researched out. The wildlife pieces, they're I have my black blobs, and I'll airbrush in the background, leaving that black alone. And then eventually I get into, when the background is completed, then I go back and I engrave with different styluses all of the textures, the markings, so that I have now a very colorful black, or background with this black and white image. And then using glazes of acrylic, I'll go through and I glaze in the appropriate color, what I need, and at the end of it, end up with a finished piece.
Yeah. It's so
based on what you're
vibrant
saying.
and pops
Yeah,
so much. It takes on like a dimension to it.
all by it. Yeah, it does, and it's and these are mostly I teach several workshops, but there's very few students that I have that continue this method because this is not instant
It
gratification.
looks very labor intensive.
It
and
is, yeah.
You have to be very patient with it.
and
because the background is black,
and some of them, yeah.
the one that I
Right,
was
the
there for
headdress,
is black. Yeah, that seems even more
This dramatic.
delicate.
Yeah, it is, and you get really good at covering up your mistakes and knowing how to cover up your mistakes.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. So, and they are, like I said, they're labor intensive, but I can also tell a lot of stories about the subject matter. Because when you get to this level of detail, you better know your subject.
Inside and out.
Yeah, because somebody's going to come along and say, "Gee, you missed 4 scales on this fish."
Yeah.
I had that happen once.
Oh, no.
And I don't know if I missed 4 scales or not, but the fish I had was missing 4 scales. I did every one that I could see.
Oh,
so,
my goodness.
But anyway, that's a technique that I use, polychromatic engraving. I use acrylics for the color and glazes over the top of that. And that's why I do oils, because oils are like recess. I can go out and play and, put my beret on, put some French music on, a bottle of wine, and stand with a brush that's 2 feet long and paint off the end of it.
Yeah.
With these, I'm bent over.
Excuse my ignorance of
It's
calling
not ignorance.
everything watercolor scratchboard. That's not. Don't listen to me. This is why we have Ron here to properly explain all the technique.
I use watercolor on my etchings.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just, for people at home who didn't get to see the handout
Yes,
that
he
I
was showing.
studied, when Ron was describing this, I am picturing like cutting in 3D formation. That is not what happens.
No. Maybe on a
It is-
microscopic scale, but not by hand. Yeah.
It is still a flat image
Yeah.
on clayboard.
It
Don't
just-
think of it as a big blob of clay and you've carved stuff away and revealed things. It's not a 3D thing. It's a flat, but it's vibrant.
Yeah, and
Even
it takes on a dimension.
Yeah.
For me, again, my very untrained, ignorant
No,
self,
no.
when I look at it, to me, there's a different
There's
dimension
depth
to it
into it.
than other pieces. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not the easiest thing in the world to do, and Echo and I tell everybody that if you want to find a hard way of doing something, just ask. Because we know
we
the hard way.
figured it out.
Done it, yeah.
That's why, like I said, I do these, and then I do the oils, and I do etchings. Of course, I do traditional etchings with the acid and the press and ink and make a huge mess.
It sounds like
It's the fun of it.
Oh,
yeah.
it is. I like it, but Echo won't let me downstairs out of my studio until I wash. But no, that's. I'm not the only guy who does multimedia things.
Right.
We have several artists in the show that will work in watercolor or oils or watercolors and acrylics or oils and acrylics on different mediums, and even the wood carvers that we have. I don't know if you know this. I'm gonna pump the Out West Art Show one more time here.
Oh, go for it.
And we
got the mic.
have the benefit of having I'm probably a little bit light on this, but we have an artist in town here who is so understated and is so low key that people don't even know that he is a 6-time world bird carving master.
Wow.
His name is Jerry Painter. And he goes to these major competitions where they're international, they're back east, and he's had books written about him. He's, like I said, he's very understated, but he is a 5, at least at 5, and I believe a 6-time international world bird carving champion that lives here in town.
Wow.
And if that doesn't say something,
Yeah.
it's really
Wow.
it's really incredible, amazing work, and that's just one of the things that people I think should spend some time talking to Jerry. If you think I'm a bird nut, talk to Jerry. This guy is really amazing.
Yeah.
He's he's outstanding in his field. He's at the top of the leaderboard.
I think that would be just fun to see because the amount of detail you kind of have to put into a carving of a bird. I just imagine myself, sitting down,
Trying to
whittle
whittle
something out of
something.
wood. And I'm going to create a bird that would replicate what an actual bird looks like. That's really not.
Yeah.
That's going to take
Whole
some
new level
talent.
of
I mean,
talent.
just holy.
Wow.
Yeah, well, it's and I wanted to mention that because it just shows the diversity of what we have here
And the caliber.
Yeah,
And he's at the Out West Art Show.
Out West Art Show. Yeah, he's
Look
exhibited
at
there for
that.
many years. Write it down. Painter, who doesn't paint? No,
Yeah.
carves.
Changes
It would be
last name.
easier if it would be Jerry Carver, but it's Jerry Painter. Jerry Painter the Carver.
Jerry
Painter the
Okay.
Carver.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And he's a great guy besides that. So
Well, when we had Chuck on, he was talking about the August events that were happening, and one of the artists that were at his show was the squirrel taxidermist.
yes.
Oh my gosh.
Hilarious.
And that, I couldn't wait to see the art, and I squealed like a little girl when I finally saw it. I'm like, oh, it is so amazing. And my mom was with, she's like, what
like,
are you
"What's
excited
happening?"
about? I'm like, we talked
This
about these
guy.
squirrels, this guy. And
Yeah.
he was engaged visiting with someone else. And so I didn't get to really fangirl over him. But oh my gosh, the amount of variety of art that you get to see. Now I'm excited to
And
see
the
Jerry
creativity of it.
Painter's
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Pay really good attention to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at all the little crevices
Oh.
of it.
Yeah,
Love birds.
it's amazing stuff. But that's once again just diversity, and just another one of the hidden talents that we have here in Great Falls.
Ron, where can we find you and Echo? Are you online? Can people get a taste of your stuff or
They're
interact
linked
with you
on
anywhere?
our website.
Well, of
Yeah.
course they are. Yeah. So I
Yes.
guess that's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Never
I
mind.
have, this we both have independent websites.
Okay.
We are married, but we're independent. And you can look either one of us up,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
yeah,
on there.
you're pretty easy to find
Yeah.
online.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to hide for a long time,
Yeah,
but it
nope,
doesn't,
not
We're
no
putting
more.
your face and voice
Yeah,
all
I
over our
know.
channels.
didn't
Yeah.
work, darn it.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
Ron, thanks for spending the afternoon with us.
Oh, this has been great.
Sure appreciate it.
Yeah, and it's nice to sit down among friends and do
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
Well,
thank you.
I just a weird plug as we end. You've waited this long. It is the funnest when we get to visit with artists.
Yeah.
Because each one completely
The
different.
story's so different.
The artwork they create is completely different. Even if they're all oil painters, what they approach, how they do it, completely different. And
Yeah.
before Ron showed up, Alex Smithson
Oh, yes.
came in with the weeping
gosh.
willow tree
Yeah.
table
I'll have
That's
to post a
amazing.
picture of
that
that.
he
yeah.
talked about on the podcast.
Yeah.
And thank you, Alex.
Yeah, he just
Smithson.
reached
That's
out.
absolutely impressive. And I am so excited to be able to showcase it at our office, which is now another feature of what you get to see. We're full of art in here. We've got the
are.
table. We've got Ophelia Easton's mural.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got photography in the back. We've got some pieces on loan from Wayne Thayers,
Yes.
who is an
One's in
avid
my
collector
office. Yes.
in
Yep.
here. Now I'll just put it out into the universe. We're looking for a bison head to adorn our wall
yeah, you have that spot you
somewhere.
really want.
I do. And I will settle for an elk, but what I want is a bison head. It can be an actual taxidermied bison. It could be a piece of artwork because I saw an amazing metal sculpted.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how heavy it is, but
Oh, yeah.
I'm open. We want more art in our
Yeah,
office.
we love showcasing that.
Yeah. So there
That's
you go.
awesome.
Yeah.
Wish I'd have known that a week ago. I just finished one.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but it's sold.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm glad.
That's really what should happen
Yes,
with your
I was
art.
like, that's what the point is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So well done on selling your
Thank
bison
you.
head.
I'll
And
put
thanks,
the word out. too.
again, thanks for hanging out with us. It has been a blast. We
Well,
completely
thank you,
enjoy
guys.
it.
This is fun.
And we hope that you've enjoyed this time together on We're No Damn Experts. We love bringing you little pieces of information about our wonderful community in hopes that you're going to show up and spend a night here and enjoy
come
some things.
Talk to Ron and Echo yourself
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Certainly Western Art Week is one of those events that are worthwhile to come out
Oh,
for.
absolutely.
And until we see your bright, smiling, happy, healthy face here in our wonderful community, we hope you're creating amazing memories with your friends and family wherever you are. We'll see you soon.
We're No Damn Experts is the recorded claims from Great Falls, Montana. covering what you need to know about this amazing damn town. Damn, that felt good.